Sometimes, late at night, when the world feels very small and very quiet, I like to turn off every light, lie on my back, and just stare at the ceiling as if it were the sky. I let the room go dark, so dark that my own hands disappear in front of my face, and I listen to the soft hum of the fridge in the next room, the distant sound of a car outside, the tiny ticking of something in the walls. And in that almost silence, there's this strange feeling that the universe is also lying here with me, breathing slowly, expanding in every direction, like a chest rising and falling in sleep. Tonight, I want to stay in that feeling with you, as if we're both lying on the floor of the same invisible room, side by side, just a few centimeters apart, but not touching. The air around us is cool and still. Maybe you can smell the faint trace of dust, that dry old book kind of smell, the scent of things that have been here for a long, long time. I love that smell. It always makes me think of stars that burned out before we were born, and of questions that waited longer than we can imagine for someone to ask them. There's one question that keeps coming back to me, like a quiet knock on the door of my mind. It's not loud, not sharp. It's more like a gentle tap, then silence, then another tap, just to remind me it's still there. The question is simple to say, but it feels huge inside my chest. Why is the universe speeding up? If you imagine the universe as a balloon, and every galaxy is a tiny dot drawn on that balloon, you might think that as the balloon gets bigger, the dots all move away from each other. That picture is already strange enough, but we could live with that. Things move apart, space stretches, fine. But what we found, not so long ago, is that the balloon isn't just growing. It's growing faster and faster, as if some invisible hand is pulling it outward more and more strongly with time. That invisible something, that push we can't touch, can't see, can't smell, or hold in our hands, is what we call dark energy. The name sounds dramatic, but it's almost funny how simple it really is. We didn't know what it was. It was invisible. It seemed to act everywhere. It made up most of the universe, so we called it dark energy. Dark, not like evil, but like unknown. Energy, because it behaves like something that fills space and has this strange, steady push. The universe's secret, hiding in plain sight, written into the fabric of everything, and yet we only noticed it when we watched galaxies and realized they're being carried away faster than they should be. I remember the first time I read about this, late at night, with the window open and cold air coming in. The sky outside was cloudy, no stars, just a gray glow from the city lights, and I had this warm mug of something sweet in my hands. The taste was thick and soft, and the ceramic felt solid and safe, but the words on the page didn't feel safe at all. They made the floor under my feet feel like it was bending. The universe is not just expanding, it's accelerating. The more space there is, the more this dark energy seems to matter. It was like reading a plot twist about reality itself. I remember putting the cup down and just listening to the quiet of my own apartment. A drop of water fell from the tap in the kitchen. The fridge clicked. Somewhere far away, a siren wailed and faded. And I thought, how can the same universe that holds my spoon and my socks and my heartbeat also be doing this wild runaway expansion on a scale so big I can't even picture it? When we say the universe is expanding, we're not saying galaxies are flying through some empty room like bullets. It's more like the room itself is stretching. The distance between things is growing, even if those things are just sitting there. Imagine you and I are lying on that dark floor again, shoulder to shoulder, and the floor itself begins to stretch. Not crack, not tear, just quietly grow, so that over a very long time, the space between us increases, even if we never move. That's the kind of expansion we're talking about. The fabric of space, the invisible stuff that separates one place from another, is stretching. For a long time, people thought that maybe the expansion would slow down. Gravity is always pulling. Every galaxy has stars and planets and gas and dark matter, all of it tugging on all the rest. So it would make sense that over time, the expansion might get weaker, like a ball thrown upward that slows as gravity pulls it back. Maybe the universe would grow, then stop, then fall back into itself in some great collapse. A kind of cosmic inhale after a long exhale. But then we measured distant exploding stars, little beacons of light called supernovae, and they were dimmer than we expected. They were farther away than they should have been if the universe were just coasting along. It was like hearing a clock tick, then realizing it's actually ticking faster than it was a moment ago. That discovery in the late 1990s changed everything. It was as if, for all of human history, we'd been walking up a hill and suddenly realized we were on an escalator that was speeding up under our feet. This accelerating expansion is what we blame on dark energy. Something everywhere, something smooth and ghost-like, is pushing space to stretch faster over time. And the strange part is, as the universe gets bigger, dark energy doesn't thin out like gas does. If you release a smell in a small room, say the smell of coffee or oranges, it spreads. It becomes weaker as it covers more space. But dark energy, if our current picture is right, doesn't fade as the universe grows. It acts like it has the same strength per chunk of space, no matter how big space gets. So as there is more and more space, there is more and more dark energy. More room, more push. When I try to imagine this, I don't see equations or symbols. I see a night field, wide and empty, with fireflies blinking in the dark. At first, only a few, close together. Then more and more appear, farther and farther away. The darkness between them stretches, but the soft, secret light of each one remains the same. The darkness, not the light, is what's really growing. Dark energy is like that, but even more subtle. It's not a glow. It's a quiet pressure in the background of everything. Scientists have tried to give this thing a shape in their minds. One simple idea is to think of it as something like a cosmological constant, a fancy phrase that just means space itself has energy. Empty space isn't truly empty. Even when you remove every particle, every beam of light, something remains, a kind of basic hum of existence. It's as if nothingness refuses to be truly nothing. That leftover energy spread evenly everywhere would act exactly like this dark energy we see. It wouldn't clump. It wouldn't gather into stars or planets. It would be smooth, the same in every direction, and it would push the universe to expand faster and faster. To me, there's something deeply emotional about this idea. The thought that even when you strip away all the objects, all the things, all the visible stuff, the universe still holds something. A background song that never stops playing, a whisper that never goes silent. It reminds me of those moments when life feels empty, when you think there's nothing left, I've lost everything. And yet somehow there's still that tiny stubborn spark inside that says, I'm still here. Dark energy feels a bit like that spark, but written into the physics of reality. There are other ideas too. Maybe dark energy is not constant. Maybe it changes slowly over time, like a field rolling down a hill you can't see. We give that rolling field a name, quintessence, like an old word for a fifth element beyond earth, air, fire, and water. Some think it could be a new kind of field filling space, shifting very gently, changing how strong the cosmic push is as the ages pass. But when we look at the sky, at how galaxies are arranged and how the universe has grown, it all seems very close to something steady, something that doesn't vary much at all. There's also the possibility that our idea of gravity itself is incomplete. Maybe gravity doesn't behave exactly the way we think on the largest scales. Maybe the equations we use, the ones that worked so beautifully for planets and stars and black holes, start to bend a little when we stretch them across billions of light years. In that case, what we call dark energy might not be a thing at all, but a sign that our story about gravity is missing a chapter. The universe might be whispering, "You're close, but not quite." I like that the universe doesn't give up its secrets easily. I like that it makes us work for them. There's something strangely comforting in knowing that even now, after all these years of looking through telescopes and building huge machines and writing down long lines of math, we're still standing in the dark, holding a small candle, watching the shadows dance on the walls of an infinite room. When I was younger, I used to think that science was about having answers. You know, like a big heavy book that tells you how everything works. But the more I learn, the more it feels like science is about learning how to love questions. Not in a fake way, not pretending we don't care about answers. We do. But there's this quiet joy in realizing that some questions might stay with us for a long, long time, like a companion walking beside us in the night. Dark energy is one of those companions. It doesn't shout, it doesn't flash. It just slowly bends the path of the universe itself. It decides our future in a way. Because if the expansion keeps speeding up, if this push keeps growing in importance, then distant galaxies will move so far away from us that their light will never reach us. They will slip beyond a kind of cosmic horizon, not like the horizon on Earth where you can just walk over to see what's there, but a boundary in space-time beyond which events can never affect us. The universe will still be there, still full of galaxies and stars and maybe life, but those distant regions will be forever out of touch. Imagine that. The night sky, millions and billions of years from now, could be almost empty. The Milky Way and the few galaxies that have merged with it or are bound to it might be all that's left visible. No great web of galaxies stretching across the universe. No faint glows at the edge of observation. Just a small island of stars in an ocean of unseen darkness. Future beings, if they exist, might look up and see a lonely sky. And unless they have records from our time, they might never know that once, long ago, the universe looked rich and crowded and full. There's something heartbreaking about that thought. Like watching a party slowly end. The music gets quieter, the lights dim, people drift away into the night, and at the end you're left in a nearly empty room, still smelling the faint mix of perfume and sweat and spilled drinks, with a few chairs pushed out of place and soft echoes of laughter in your memory. Dark energy is like the quiet hand that turns down the volume, that gently carries the guests away from each other, until everyone is isolated in their own little space. But there's another side to it. The acceleration also means that the universe might avoid collapsing into a final crushing end. Instead of all matter falling back into a single dense fireball, the cosmos might keep expanding forever, growing colder, more diffuse, more still. This possible future is sometimes called a heat death, which sounds dramatic, but is really more like a slow fading. Over unimaginable times, stars burn out, new stars form less and less often. Black holes swallow what they can, and then slowly evaporate themselves. Everything spreads out. The temperature of space creeps closer and closer to absolute zero, that perfect stillness where motion almost stops. In that far future, dark energy would still be there, stretching the remaining space, even as there is almost nothing left to stretch. The universe would become a thin, cold mist of almost nothing, spread across an almost infinite darkness, with the quiet, invisible hand of dark energy still gently pulling at the edges. Like a breath that never ends, but becomes so thin you can't feel it anymore. I don't know about you, but when I try to imagine those timescales, my brain gives up. I can count years, can think of decades, maybe a few centuries if I push it. But billions and trillions of years, it's like trying to taste a color or hear a number. My mind just shrugs and says, I'll pretend I understand. And yet, even if I can't truly feel that stretch of time, I can feel something else, a strange, soft sadness, and also a deep peace. The universe doesn't rush. It doesn't worry about deadlines. It just unfolds. Sometimes when I walk at night under a clear sky, I imagine the invisible presence of dark energy as a kind of pressure in my chest. The stars above me are real, sharp, bright points, some white, some with a bit of blue or orange. The air might smell like wet asphalt after rain or like dry leaves and smoke in winter. I can feel the ground under my shoes, solid, rough, and the tiny stones pressing through the soles. And yet, beyond all of this, beyond my little street and my city and my planet, space is stretching. Not in a way I can see or hear. It doesn't make a sound. There's no cosmic creaking or tearing. It's so gentle, so slow, that it only shows itself when you watch over billions of years. It's humbling to know that most of the universe, in terms of energy, is this dark energy. If we break the cosmic pie into pieces, the stuff that makes you and me and stars and trees and phones and oceans, all of that is just a tiny fraction. There's also dark matter, another invisible thing that holds galaxies together with its gravity like a hidden skeleton. And then taking up the largest piece, there's dark energy. This quiet, uniform push that sets the pace of cosmic history. We live our entire lives inside a universe ruled by something we can't touch, can't bottle, can't switch off. Sometimes I wonder how it would feel if, for just 1 second, we could sense dark energy with our bodies. Not see it or measure it with instruments, but actually feel it on our skin, in our muscles, in our breath. Would it feel like a wind, a pressure, a kind of tingling? Would it be terrifying to suddenly feel the universe itself expanding through us? Or would it be strangely familiar, like realizing that the faint background sound you've heard your whole life is actually a song? Of course, we have no evidence that we could ever feel it like that. Dark energy doesn't seem to push objects apart directly in a local way. It's the large-scale shape of space that it affects. Galaxies, not chairs. But the idea of feeling the universe that directly, like a physical sensation, sits in the back of my mind like a dream. A dream where you put your hand into the air and can feel the stretch of space-time under your fingers, like the tension of a soft rubber sheet. I sometimes think about the people who first realized what was going on. Astronomers looking at the light from distant supernovae, tracing tiny changes in brightness, comparing the distances and redshifts, and then slowly, reluctantly accepting the conclusion: the universe is speeding up. How did that feel? Did they sit in quiet rooms like this, staring at their notes, listening to the hum of their computers, feeling their own hearts beating a little faster? Did they feel small, or powerful, or just stunned? There's something so human in that moment. A handful of minds on a small planet, circling an ordinary star in one galaxy among trillions, noticing that the entire universe is changing its pace. It's like standing in a field and realizing that the wind on your face is part of a global storm that wraps around the whole planet. Except this wind isn't air. It's the geometry of reality. When I think about dark energy, I also think about how often in life we are moved by forces we don't fully understand. You meet someone, and for some reason you feel drawn to them. Or you feel a sudden urge to change something in your life, move to another city, start a new project, let go of something old. There's a pattern inside you, an invisible field of experiences and memories and hopes gently pushing you in a certain direction. You might try to explain it with words later, but in the moment, it's more like a quiet acceleration, a shift in your path. In a way, dark energy is like that on a cosmic scale. A silent influence, not obvious at first glance, but slowly, clearly, bending the trajectory of everything. It doesn't explain why we love or why we fear or why we dream, but it reminds us that not all important forces are visible. I like to imagine a far future civilization, maybe not human, maybe something very different, sitting under their own version of a night sky, thinking about us. Maybe they have records, faint traces of our time, old data about galaxies and cosmic background radiation, those soft microwaves left over from the early universe. Maybe they know more about dark energy than we do. Maybe they've discovered that it's tied to something even deeper, some structure of reality we can't yet imagine. Or maybe they're just as puzzled as we are, staring at their own equations, feeling the same mix of confusion and wonder. I imagine one of them, alone in a quiet room, their version of a ceiling above them, their version of air around them, listening to their version of a fridge humming, thinking, how strange that we exist inside this accelerating universe. How strange that we can think about it at all. There's something very beautiful about the fact that our bodies, made from atoms forged in stars, are now used to think about the fate of those stars. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe, all of it comes from past stars that burned and exploded and spread their elements across space. Those elements then gathered into planets, into life, into you. Now you lie in the dark, listening, and your mind stretches out across billions of light years, trying to touch this thing we call dark energy. The universe, in some sense, is thinking about itself through you. When I sit with that idea, I feel a warmth in my chest, like a small candle flame. The room around me goes soft at the edges. The sounds become a little more distant. And even though we are talking about something vast and cold and impersonal, I don't feel alone. I feel like a tiny cell in a much larger body, doing its little job, pulsing with awareness. Sometimes people say that learning about things like dark energy makes them feel insignificant. The universe is so big, we are so small, our lives are so short. But I don't feel it that way. Yes, the universe is huge, and yes, we are small. But the fact that something as small as a human brain can hold even a faint picture of something as big as cosmic acceleration, that feels like a miracle to me. Not a miracle in a magical sense, but in the sense of, how is this even possible? It's like fitting the ocean into a teacup, not all of it, but a reflection of it, a taste of its salt, a hint of its sound. Dark energy is the universe's secret, but it's also a mirror. When we stare into that mystery, we see our own limits, our own hunger to know, our own fear of not knowing, and our own strange, stubborn courage to keep asking anyway. We build telescopes that peer farther, detectors that measure more precisely, theories that stretch our language to the breaking point, all because we can't stop wondering. That wondering is one of the most beautiful things about being alive. If you close your eyes now, just for a moment, and imagine the universe as it was long ago when it was much younger, you might see a hot, bright fog filling everything. No stars yet, no galaxies, just a dense, glowing soup of particles and light. Over time, as it expanded, it cooled. Tiny ripples in that fog grew, turning into clumps, then into stars and galaxies. For a while, the pull of gravity slowed the expansion, like a hand gently pressing against a door that's being pushed open. But then, as the universe grew larger and more spread out, dark energy began to dominate. The gentle push of this hidden field overcame the pull of matter. The door kept opening, faster and faster. We live in that changeover time. A time when galaxies still shine, when we can still see the cosmic web stretched across the sky, when the afterglow of the early universe still whispers to our radio telescopes, when dark energy is important but not yet everything. We live at a moment when the universe is readable, when the clues to its story are still visible to us. That timing feels almost intimate, like arriving at a theater just as the lights dim and the main act begins. We didn't choose this moment. We just woke up in it. But we can choose what to do with it. We can look away, keep our heads down, live our entire lives inside a small bubble of worries and pleasures and tasks. Or we can, from time to time, lift our eyes, stretch our minds, and let this vastness wash over us. Let the thought of dark energy, of an accelerating cosmos, flow into us like cold water over warm skin. Shocking at first, then strangely refreshing. I don't think we're meant to understand everything. Maybe dark energy will stay partly hidden no matter how clever we become. Maybe we'll find math that describes it perfectly but still struggle to say what it really is in simple words. Maybe it will always keep something back, some core of mystery, and I think that's okay. We don't need to solve the universe like a puzzle to be at home in it. We can live inside a question and still find peace. Right now, as you listen, the space between galaxies is stretching. The light from distant clusters is being pulled to longer wavelengths, shifted to red, like the lowering pitch of a siren moving away. The cosmic web, this grand structure of matter and void, is being slowly, gently thinned. And here we are, on a small rock warmed by a yellow star, breathing air that smells of our planet, tasting food grown from its soil, feeling emotions shaped by our history, thinking thoughts that reach beyond our sky. Dark energy doesn't care about us, not in any personal way. It doesn't notice our stories, our heartbreaks, our hopes. It just does what it does, following whatever deep rule it follows. And yet, by existing in this universe, by being part of it, we are part of that story too. We are tiny ripples in the same fabric that dark energy is stretching. We are made from the same laws, the same constants, the same strange mix of forces. When I lie in the dark and think about all this, I sometimes imagine the universe as a single long breath. Not in real time, of course, but as a metaphor. A slow inhale from the Big Bang, expansion, cooling, stars forming, life appearing, minds waking up, and then, over unimaginable ages, a slow exhale into quiet, thin, cold emptiness. Dark energy is the part of that breath that keeps the chest rising, even when gravity wants it to fall. It is the insistence of space to keep stretching, and we, for this brief luminous moment, are here inside the breath, feeling it, naming it, wondering about it, sharing it with each other in soft voices in the night. Maybe that's our place in all of this. Not to control the universe, not to be the center of it, but to be its witnesses. To say with our short lives and fragile minds, we saw, we asked, we felt something. We cared that it was beautiful, even if it didn't care about us. As you sit or lie wherever you are now, maybe you can feel the weight of your body against the chair or the bed or the floor, the slight pressure of gravity pulling you down, the familiar comfort of being held by your planet. Underneath that, far beneath your feet, the rock of Earth rests in the curved space around the sun. The sun orbits the center of our galaxy, which moves through a cluster of galaxies, which drifts in the great flow of the cosmic web. And all of that is being gently carried apart by dark energy, like small leaves floating on a slowly widening river. You don't feel that stretch directly, but you are part of it. Your atoms ride along with it. Your memories, your fears, your loves, all of them are written into patterns of matter and energy that live in this expanding space. You are a small, bright, local arrangement in a universe ruled on the largest scales by something we barely understand. To me, that doesn't make life meaningless. It makes it more precious. Because in a universe that could have been simple and uniform and dead, we get this. Stars and planets and oceans and trees and music and laughter and pain and healing and questions about dark energy whispered in the dark. We get to exist in a story that is bigger than we can hold, and yet somehow we can still hold a reflection of it. So I like to think of dark energy not just as the universe's secret, but as its silent rhythm, the slow beat that sets the tempo for everything else. We may never dance in step with it fully, may never hear its full song, but we can feel its presence at the edges of what we know. And in those edges, in that not knowing, there is room for awe. Tonight, when you turn off the lights and let the room grow quiet, maybe you'll feel a little of that awe. Not as a loud explosion in your mind, but as a soft, deep calm. The kind that comes when you realize you don't have to solve everything. You can just be here, a small, conscious moment in an enormous, accelerating universe, listening to the hush between your own heartbeats. And in that hush, if you listen closely, you might sense it, not as a sound, not as a sight, but as a feeling just beyond language. The universe, still expanding, still unfolding, still holding its secrets, and still somehow making room for you.